Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Property Pro Tips, straight from the pros. Today we have the infamous, the magical, the outstanding, none other than the weather wizard himself and master of all things real estate, Kirk Hawkins, ladies and gentlemen.
It's great to be here.
Welcome, Kurt.
As magical as I can possibly be.
You are very magical, Kirk. So welcome to the show, Kirk. You are a local celebrity. I am honored to have you on the show, and I know you are. Not only are you on the air with the weather and traffic, but you also have a substantial real estate business, and I think that's very interesting to our audience, and it's always been very interesting to me that you have these two different lives, and they're actually quite symbiotic, I would say. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. I'm sure a lot of the viewers out there are going to be very interested to hear how those two parts of your lives and how that makes it what the real Kirk's like. So, without further ado, let me read into the annuals, your bio. Today, we are joined by Kirk Hawkins, a top producing real estate professional in Southern California with over 128 million in residential home sales. As the chief broker officer and head of growth at Nile Technology Incorporated, Kirk leads a skilled team dedicated to client satisfaction. Before his successful transition to real estate, Kirk enjoyed a 20-year career as an award-winning news anchor with regular appearances on KTLA and roles in feature films and even a Super Bowl commercial. I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah.
Known for his integrity and patient approach, Kirk has driven some of the highest property sales in the Los Angeles area. A proud resident of West Hollywood and an Agora Hills native, Kirk is a UC Santa Barbara alumnus, Go Gauchos, with a passion for helping his clients find the perfect home. Welcome, Kirk. I so appreciate you, sir, for being with us.
Thank you. So great to be here.
Yeah, man.
Podcast. So now to be a guest, it's like next level.
You know you made it when you're a guest. Anyone could start one.
The guest takes it to a different playing field.
Indeed it does, right? You're on the spot. People want to hear you. And without further ado, people do want to hear you. So what made you, Kirk, get into real estate, coming from this career in entertainment, or broadcasting, I should say?
So I read a book that you may have read called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It kind of blew my mind, the whole idea of cash flow, financial freedom. And obviously a big part of the book is doing that through income generating, cash flowing real estate. So instantly I kind of like jumped head first. It was actually kind of interesting because so as a broadcaster, reporter, anchor on the news side of things, I've bounced kind of all around the country. I worked in Spokane, Orlando, Charlotte. I thought that was the, career path that I was going to go forever and ever. And then at one point, I actually lost my job in Charlotte. My contract wasn't renewed. The station at the same time was a Fox station. They became a CW. The whole dynamic of everything kind of changed. And so I had to scramble, and I didn't really have any savings. I wasn't really prepared, and I had to kind of like think of what I was going to do. So I scrambled and did as many TV job interviews that I could. And eventually I got something back in Los Angeles, but I, really kept thinking like, I don't want to be in this situation again. And that kind of came at the same time of reading the book, where it was like, wow, if I can achieve financial freedom or get cash flowing opportunities, this money, can come in, and I just have to like do the work to kind of just manage the different things, and that can become my job. And so that kind of was like the thing that kind of was the impetus. And so I jumped into getting my real estate license. I, kind of did all the things, joined a brokerage, did all the things that they tell you to do, eventually got my first transaction, and everything kind of snowballed from there. I've actually, been able to sell well above 143 million worth of real estate in Southern California. I'd say, and the important part of all of that is that, you're helping out more than 140 families, basically, or, more than 100 families. I forget how the numbers kind of break down, but, find homes, buy property, kind of be able to begin the process of having some sort of a worthwhile net worth. So yeah, and it's interesting because I thought that this would just be something I could do on the side.
Hmm.
And as you know, real estate is not something that you can kind of just do as a side hustle. It has to be really your primary gig. And so I was doing real estate full time. I quit television and started doing that, and things were fantastic. And then like a week into it, they asked me if I would want to like come back and fill in. And one of the opportunities that they needed was someone to help with weather. And I had my particular boss at the time always wanted me to do weather, and many news managers along the way always wanted me to try the weather. And so now I'm kind of in a rhythm where like doing the weather is my side hustle, and it's like so fun. And I really enjoy it too, in the same way that I love and enjoy real estate.
It's so awesome to hear like when someone loves their art and craft, right? Like when it's so infrequent you hear such things.
Oh yeah, no, very much so. And it's interesting too because the same skill set as a reporter or an anchor, you kind of have to act like a salesperson, convincing people to do interviews with you on camera is a similar skill set that it takes to convince people to work with you, when they're investing in, their the largest asset that they typically have ever invested in. And just being able to like get people into their first homes, get people, move up into a nice opportunity, sell their homes, and that sort of thing is like one of the most rewarding things ever.
That's an interesting correlation you made between the pitching someone to interview and selling a house. Tell me a little bit more how you drew. It's a very logical to me.
Oh yeah.
Tell me how you when you made that connection and like and a little bit more about that
Well, it's
connection.
interesting because, like, say for example, you're a reporter on the scene of a breaking story. There's like some sort of a crime that happens, and they're pretty awful things. Like a family member might die in a car
Mm-hmm.
crash. There might be, a service member who died in Afghanistan or Iraq or something. And your job is to kind of get some sort of a story together. And a lot of times that involves like knocking on the family members' doors right after it happened. And that's an incredibly vulnerable, sensitive time. I would never pressure anyone, but it always would be an opportunity. I would always kind of present it as an opportunity. Like, they want me to do the story. It would be nice if you could tell us about this person, add like a nice dose of sensitivity. And very few people want to be on TV, even in Los Angeles, even if you're just talking about gas prices or something really like basic. So it always requires a degree of kind of selling. And I say persuading because like if people said they weren't interested, I would always back away immediately and no pressure. But even like when I was doing those gas prices stories, I'd be like coming up to people filling up their gas tanks with a microphone and not and to be honest, if someone came up to me doing that, I'd be like, thank you. So to some degree, there's like that aspect of sales that's at work for sure.
Yeah, that it's a very good point because you are selling. You would think in Los Angeles, people would want to be on TV more.
Yeah,
I'm surprised by that actually because I've never
yeah,
actually
yeah.
been approached by a reporter for anything. But
Well, now we know to contact you. I think it's definitely reporter. There's a sales element to it, and I think television has that same. I mean, television reporting journalism has a
mm,
sales element to it that you also have in real estate. And it's like I might as well, and the biggest thing about real estate is as hard as you're willing to work, you're going to get some sort of a return. In television, there's a lot of subjectivity. Management has their own opinions of you and they determine if you get to move forward or not. And in real estate, if you're willing to like really like bust a move, you're going to be rewarded basically. It's just kind of like a numbers game. And so I was like, oh, this is great. I love working with people. I love working with like numbers. I love nice houses in particular, or even houses that require work and can be, turned into a project. And of course, like anytime there's an income generating opportunity, I get extra excited.
that is a perfect segue into letting our audience know exactly why you are coming live from your studio car.
My car. Yeah.
When you have a whole new studio, but yet we are having our podcast from your car.
Well,
There's
well,
reason
and you
for
know,
that.
but
Because as we
we
spoke
talked
before.
about doing a podcast weeks ago. I was all ready. I have a light, a little nice setup at home at my desk, inside the air conditioning, and all that sort of thing. But at the last minute, a listing that I have that actually is on hold at the moment, but we're trying to get into escrow. We got a very compelling showing inquiry from someone that I think would be a perfect fit for this particular property. I decided to squeeze the showing in, which is kind of like the story of my life. Every day is no 2 days are the same. I'm always kind of running and gunning, driving back and forth all over town. And in this particular case, I was like, you know what? Let's just try to squeeze it in right before. And I did with like a matter of, 2 or 3 minutes to spare to get it. I mean,
Nice
not to
job.
spare, like I was 2 or 3 minutes late to get to you after just squeezing it in. And it's the same thing like if there's breaking news and I would have to drop everything to go to that mentality has served me well in this space too. And so, of course, my apologies from speaking to you from a car in a neighborhood in Venice. And, but like the cool thing is, all those influencers that whenever they post stuff on TikTok and Instagram, I feel like they're always sitting in their driver's seat.
I think you're exuding exactly what you said. You're showing like you got to go when it's time. That 24 real estate is, as you pointed out, 24/7. And if you're too late, 2 minutes late to Trevor's whatever podcast, that's just fine. Especially if it's a real estate podcast, because I understand, we know, we get it.
We can really underscore the point too. And the market with interest rates and like low demand, low inventory has all kind of adds into it where it's like if you have an opportunity, you need to strike. And that's why
Oh,
I'm not as good about this, but a lot of real estate agents will always have their phones on and answer, after one or two rings immediately, no matter where they are or what they're doing, just because, your next transaction can be on the other line, basically.
they don't answer it. They call the next person.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. And it's interesting too, like in real estate, in television, I still do work really odd hours. In real estate, I think I work longer days, nights, weekends, and I probably work extensively and harder, but I don't feel as tired as I do if I work like a 12-hour schedule. And granted, there's a lot of different variables I think that are at play, but I think like even if I work 12, 15, 18-hour days, I don't feel exhausted or tired. I just still feel that like physical, it's stimulating, it's fulfilling. And so it kind of propels me and makes it a lot easier.
What do you think it is that gives you energy about real estate?
I think it's just that, getting the deal done, making things happen. I like helping people. I also like, if a seller or buyer has a goal, I help like kind of, I love like sinking my teeth into whatever that is and trying to make it happen. Like if the seller really wants to sell for a certain price and that price is going to be, the highest end of the market, it's like challenge accepted. Let me see what I can do. The numbers don't lie. Sometimes, it's you're pushing really hard for no reason, but like that makes it so much fun and super challenging and really like satisfying if you're able to like make it happen too.
The thrill of the deal, right?
And it doesn't help that I mean it doesn't hurt when you get those checks and
No,
they're nice.
no, 100%, and that always comes if you do right by your people, right? That's easy. Money's easy if you're doing something right by people. If you're doing
I
justice for the
agree.
world.
Like the abundance factor that like if you just focus on doing the right thing and working as hard as you can, that the money comes and there's no reason to ever be too anxious about it because it always seems to work out exactly as it should.
And you and I meet eye to eye on that. We figured that out at our marathon lunch a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's just like that's the truth, right? Like, why worry
No.
about it if you're doing the best you can and you're providing the best service to your clients? Money will come.
Yeah.
Like you will. You got to be just consistent and persistent. Stay in it.
Yes. No, very
Okay.
much.
And I love the crossover from broadcasting into real estate into like part-time broadcasting. I mean, that's
And
that's amazing.
and believe me, like my life can be chaotic and great. Like today's probably one of those days where it's like extra chaotic, but I wouldn't have it any other way. The days go by fast, the like weeks fly by. And so the key thing is to be as present as possible as it's all
Hmm.
happening. I really do enjoy it and love it and so stimulated. Like I went from, the transaction, just trying to get business going. And, it takes a good 2 or 3 years
Hmm.
to getting a nice rhythm. I now, own a brokerage and, we're probably about to have our 14th or 15th. Actually, when I was signing on for this, I got the notification that I need to like add 2 new agents to our roster. And so we haven't even been in existence a year and we're already kind of at 14 or 15. And so that's like
Wow!
super exciting. And then,
Congratulations.
no, thank you. Thank you. And I think, another part of our business is we're working on a real estate tech startup. That's the Nile technology of everything.
Is
And
it?
that's like super cool too. And there's just so many opportunities for what real estate can do. That's also why I'm constantly like pounding the pavement. There's always something I'm working on related to
A true entrepreneur through and through, man.
exactly.
So, kind of with the same leading with the same kind of vein on the communication and with media. How have your communication skills increased or changed from your media career into your real estate career? Like, has there been a line of communication that's like through your communication channels, like straight to social media? Has it improved? Has it changed? What's it look like?
That's a good question. I think that the communicate the principles of like journalism are, get right to the point as fast as possible. And so I'll notice if I'm on the phone with a real estate agent, if I'm talking to a potential buyer, or if I'm like pitching myself as a listing agent, I'll notice just in the way I speak or the way that I present information that I'll start to veer off into like a little bit more wordy or a little bit more chatty, and then I'll quickly dial it back and be like, nope, let's so like short, succinct answers and information and like straight to the point is kind of like is maybe how that has helped too. Plus, like the comfortability that you have when you're on set translates well into like an open house or a showing. I think if anything, it's just the comfortability that I have because of being on TV that translates into, and like if I go to like broker caravans and there's an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to speak in front of a group, I'm not as anxious about it, I think, as I would have been without, the presentation skills that I have from TV.
20 years of live camera.
Yeah. And you may or may not be surprised, but like I've done a lot of, especially at KTLA, sometimes I wear costumes, other times I
That's funny.
tell like really personal stuff about myself while we're like on set. Not in like a bad way, but sometimes I'll
No.
be like, I can't believe I just said that on the air. I'll talk about my nephew and my nieces, my sister, my family, and everyone kind of has, my love of Taylor Swift, for example. Everyone knows everything about me, and that comfortability factor. I think on the one hand, it's been like a personal growth moment because I was always a very shy kid growing up. And so
Really?
this kind of helped me kind of step into my own shoes and feel comfortable with who I was too.
So, how'd you go from shy to live camera? That's a big jump.
I like a big jump. It's funny because like I think I wanted to I really loved news and I loved history, and I felt like news was like you were on the front lines of history as it was happening, was kind of like the initial idea I had. And I just loved watching Good Morning America, the Today Show, the KTLA morning news when I was growing up. I was like, I really like this. I want to be able to do it. I don't know if I really can. And so a few years would go by, and this was when I was in like high school, and I ultimately was like, you know what? I ended up going to some leadership conferences. There was one in particular at Pepperdine University that I went to, as I guess you would call it like a rising senior, and the summer between my junior and senior year, and just listening to all these motivational speakers, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna go for it. And interestingly enough, that's how I decided to, like, get a do some shadowing with some potential mentors, and then eventually getting internships, which introduced me to your wife long
Right.
before the two of you were an item.
Missoula, right?
And
Missoula.
then, yeah, I one of the internships I had, sleeping on her couch for like
6 weeks.
one summer in college. And like, it's ultimately been this like amazing adventure that not only has been this personal growth opportunity, but it's, led to some amazing friendships, and, of course, like, ultimately to real estate too.
Right, because you make natural connections in what with your stories and just being on air.
Yeah.
It would
Oh, yeah.
it would inspire trust in anyone, I would imagine, knowing you personally, that trust is real, right? It's like
Yeah. No.
it's not a. I'm just telling this for the sake of the audience. I've met with Kirk, and we've had lunch. We've seen each other in different places. I've heard from my wife. And being like, God, he is one of those stand-up, integritous guys on the news, 100%. If not in LA, definitely on the news.
Yeah. It's really important to. I mean, all of that is like very, very important to me too.
Very much so, because without trust in real estate, you don't have
Yeah.
a career, right?
Right. Right.
So, and in that, on things that as a trustworthy source in real estate, where do you see the trends going, like in your market?
I don't know if you're familiar with the National Association of Realtors. Just signed on for this major settlement as part of, a class action discussion. I think, at least at the point when we're having the discussion today, it hasn't been approved by a federal judge, so we don't really know what's going to happen with that. But
Right.
there are different agreements that have been made associated with that, and one is that the buyer agent commission won't be published in the MLS for other agents, and the buyers will have to sign representation agreements with their buyer agents, and there will be more of a precedent set where I think sellers may not necessarily need to sign a contract that says that they'll pay for the buyer's agent and the listing agent. And so a lot of different, power and money, I think, will be at play here. And it'll be interesting to see how this goes. I know that a lot of agents in Los Angeles don't think that
They don't think it will change.
I think that's kind of like the general mood now, is they think
Hmm.
it'll be, the status quo is, if you have a listing agreement, you talk to the seller, and the typical commission that a seller pays is 5%. And 2.5% of that usually goes to the listing agent, 2.5% goes to the buyer's agent. The question now is, will the seller say, nope, we're not paying the buyer's agent commission? So then the question is like, who will pay the buyer agent commission? Will there be some sort of an agreement between buyer agent and buyer, or will the seller offer some sort of a credit for the buyer agent commission without agreeing to it, just carte blanche across the board? And so the challenge is with, I think, with commissions is like one major issue that we'll see happening soon too. I think it all kind of remains to be seen where this is going to go. Either way, like, change is in the air, and it'll be interesting to see how that change fully kind of manifests itself in all of this too. It has the potential to be like super intense, basically.
Is on the and especially on the residential side, right? Because does this extend into the commercial brokers, like the 5+ units? There's all
This, you're
sides to
right.
this.
This is residential real estate. But, and this comes on like a lot
That's
of agents.
huge, though.
Yeah. A lot of agents have left the business
Right.
over the last 2 years as interest rates have been high. And I think this will further kind of erode some of those agents that were already kind of hanging on a lifeline in a way. But I also think that one aspect of this that's really positive is it does create more transparency, I think, for the seller and even the buyer. And I think, anytime you can have more transparency on the consumer side, that's where we all went too.
100%, and it could be an interesting dynamic to see because and then what happens when there's a double listing when an agent can represent both sides? Can they do that no longer?
Well, and I think that's right now dual agency where like the listing agent could represent the buyers. I think that creates another level of complexity here
Mm-hmm.
because if the buyers are forced to work with the listing agent, is the listing agent going to be really looking out for the fiduciary responsibility of the buyers, or is his or her allegiance going to be to the seller? And so I think, we've even started talking to some of our agents about this, and we think that, you know, maybe what you potentially do if you're in a situation like that is you refer the buyers to someone who works at another brokerage just so that you completely lose any sign of conflict of interest.
Hmm.
The biggest thing about real estate is the ability to provide fiduciary duty, fiduciary responsibility to your
Right.
clients. They're getting best opportunity that's right for them. And I think the dual agency presents challenges associated with that too.
It absolutely can, depending on the person, right? That's a person by person, character by character. I've seen the good and the bad on sides of all that. It
Yeah,
can be done as long as it can be. I've seen it done very fairly. I see it done almost illegally. I don't know. I'm not too much in the residential side, but I know that there's the good and the bad and the ugly everywhere, right? But
yes,
right
no,
when you
exactly.
come down to like someone like you, like it's you're going to get the both. You're going to negotiate with yourself if you need to make sure that both sides are your fiduciary duty is held to both sides. So there is that, right? If you have
Yeah,
somebody you trust, a trustworthy individual that's got a good track record, I, I mean, in my opinion, I think it's okay to have dual agency, especially if it gets you the deal as a buyer,
right,
right?
right.
As long as you could trust the person in front of you, that's because you have to sign that. And I've seen it work, but I would only do that with somebody I known, like I knew, or knew
You're
of,
right.
or referred from. Switching subjects just a little bit. As a resident of WeHo, aka West Hollywood, we know it as WeHo here in the West Coast. How does your personal experience influence your professional recommendations?
And you think, like, is there something unique about living in West Hollywood? And
Oh, there's certainly I mean, it's a niche market, right? It has its own. That's the great thing about Los Angeles. There are 57 different like micro market, niche market, sub markets go on down. If
yeah,
there's somewhere for everyone to live, you're gonna find your people. So and West Hollywood's like just it's its own thing. We manage buildings there. I've worked with developers developing things in there. It's just it's its own unique city. And I was just how I was curious if that has an influence on on your real estate strategy, on how you go about your real estate, or how you
you know,
influence
yeah,
buyers.
it's interesting because there's a part of real estate where you're rewarded if you're heavily experienced in one particular area, and if you're a market expert, a neighborhood expert. And I think what's interesting about LA is, at least in my experience, because I've done transactions all over the city, all over Southern California, and I tend to feel like once you've done one, you can kind of figure out the others. But
Mm.
I think the knowledge that some agents have specifically about neighborhoods where they can say, oh, you know, that that house on the corner just sold for so that's why I think this price is too high, or this price is too low, or this is the strategy that we should go with because that's what all these other houses have gone through. And granted, like the MLS data is super helpful for that, but
Mm.
if someone can approach that without even doing extra research, I think that's super valuable. But like the mentality of someone who lives in Santa Clarita versus someone who lives in Thousand Oaks, compared to someone who lives in West Hollywood, they're all super different submarkets. And West Hollywood, I think it's important that you have parking, dedicated parking in a condo or a house.
So true.
But then there's other, location things where it's really important to live within walking distance. What's great about West Hollywood is it's all very walkable, and it's much more walkable than a neighborhood like Santa Clarita or Thousand Oaks or, Pasadena. Pasadena has some walkable areas, but some of the suburban parts are a little bit less pedestrian friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think there's like different lifestyle factors. Like even in Santa Monica and Venice,
Mm-hmm.
there's surfers that, want to be able to get within walking distance of the beach. And, that becomes a different priority altogether too.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, you're right. Like, I don't know if I totally have answered that, but I think
That's a good thought.
being,
It's a thought experiment, right? It's
yeah,
like because maybe it doesn't, but you have super local, hardcore, local knowledge as a real estate agent of West Hollywood. Like you're probably because your agency's based near and about around West Hollywood.
yeah, we're technically based in Playa Vista right now, but I think we're going to be moving to West. We're move our focus to West Hollywood. We've had kind of different neighborhoods that we've been focused on, but I think like actually here's another thing too. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm building an ADU on my property, and while I was building it, it was very important that the ADU guest house, granny flat, whatever you want to call it, had an in-unit washer and dryer, that it also had a central heating and air. I know I
Mm-hmm.
probably and one thing that I also went a little bit fancier is I also have a dishwasher. It's a smaller dishwasher, but like I made sure to have all of those check boxes because I think renters definitely would be willing to pay a premium if you have those. At least from what I've noticed when representing clients or clients that are renting or clients that are buying houses or condos, they tend to want those things.
I can verify for you that right now, 100%, you are correct, sir. I deal in the multifamily world, and those are like the top
Yeah,
three amenities.
yeah,
That washer dryer being the number one.
definitely. And so, there's some neighborhoods where it might not be as important,
Correct.
maybe absolutely important in West Hollywood and other like urban area.
Right. Here's the opposite. For instance, on that, dishwashers in say like Lomita, even Hawthorne, Lawndale, and like let's say like East LA don't get used. They get used for
Yeah,
storage. Tenants don't use it. That's just they wash everything. They'll be brand new dishwashers or just full of like pots and pans. They use them for storage. So you get so, but in West Hollywood, I know from just leasing up a large apartment building, the Crown Apartments on the corner of Santa Monica and Kings Road. That was a we did
oh, I know. Yeah,
my old property management company before I sold it. We did the full lease up of that, and the product launch of 69 units, I think, but it was top of the market at the time, and those things had to have dishwashers. And washer dryers, or no one was looking at them. It did no
right.
dishwasher, no deal.
Yeah,
West Hollywood is very dishwasher-ish. If that's a word.
very dishwasher-ish.
Do you agree? South, I wouldn't get into a house without a dishwasher or an
Right,
apartment.
right.
So, given your so extensive media background and all you've been in so much media for longer than most. How does that influence, or what tools do you use from your time in front of the camera or in production perhaps? How does that influence your approach to marketing high end luxury houses and deals?
Sure. It's interesting, especially the high-end properties.
Especially.
You're presenting a lifestyle, and you want the you want the potential buyer to imagine themselves living in that house, living that lifestyle. And so there's different ways that you can emphasize that. Obviously, staging is a huge one. And, the staging investment is usually a huge part of that. And then, of course,
Tell us. Assume someone doesn't know what staging means.
oh, sorry. So there's different staging companies, which literally they are a service where you can rent out for a listing period of time, whether it's like 1 month to 6 months, depending on how long it's on the market. But they'll literally take a vacant property and bring in couches, coffee tables, accessories. There's a popular staging company here where she's really big on white towels in every bathroom. And so that the white towels make you think about, you know, how comfortable it is to use the space. And there's some sort of mental trigger that it's responsible. Even the one of the things too is, how you have a some sort of I forget what you would call it, a table next to the front door in like the foyer area where you would put your keys or your
Keys.
wallet. And she said it's always important to have that included as part of the staging process. That's like a really big part of creating this image, getting people to feel comfortable once they walk in the door. And so that I think that really applies to the higher end homes.
Mhm.
I think, there's also I'm so used to creating stories and packaged interviews and that sort of thing that having a little fun with a marketing video is also good. In fact, like I had this really great listing maybe 7 years ago, and it was in the Hollywood Hills. It was an architectural property, and it was three different structures. And so the average buyer in the Hollywood Hills was not interested. The average buyer, I think, in general, just didn't understand.
Right.
And we interviewed the seller, who happened to be an architect as well, and was super passionate about the architects that built it, super passionate about how to make it work. And we did kind of a narrated tour with him. And the moment we released that, that was in the early days of being able to buy Facebook ads and push things out.
Mhm.
Within like, I think maybe 2 weeks, we got it in escrow, and those buyers, I believe, still own it today. But
Wow.
it was just hearing the story and the
The
passion from
story.
the storytelling that's helped me on the media side, on this side of things. And not only, the video process, but even there's an art form to that too, that I've kind of create a memory or a vision or something really memorable. That's the way to do it.
Right. And buildings have stories. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
History is
Buildings,
it.
houses. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I'm envisioning what you were just talking about is three different architects owned that house at three different times, and each one had to put their spin on it. And that's what I'm
Yeah.
envisioning. Maybe there was just one, but like
Yeah.
if you told the story, I'm like, well, Ansel, not Ansel Adams, but who was the famous architect that the hills, he owned it, and then this one owned it and changed it to did a craftsman style. Now that guy owned it, he went modern, and the first one was like, Mediterranean.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Just to make it look strange, just because that's art to them, right? But I can see how an architect tying all that together and explaining it. This is what it was. Then
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great piece of advice for like for marketing. So like, what's the story of this place? It's kind of interesting. There's always something
Definitely.
interesting. Even the most boring square house got some kind of story there,
Yeah.
because there's always a story.
Absolutely.
As you,
Always there always is. And bringing that story forward is always the fun part of the marketing process too.
and there's where you're the master, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna
Yeah.
be unstoppable in LA, man. Like the
I hope
storyteller.
so. I'm trying.
So you are doing well. I'm a fan.
Oh, no, well,
All right, last bit. Lightning round questions. I'm just gonna fire them off. I'm gonna be quiet, not ask for any explanations or otherwise. You can say as much, as little, or tell me to skip it. Ask me something else. Silly
okay.
man, if you want
Sure, let's do it.
Last five. Here we go. Ready? Quick tip for new homeowners in West Hollywood.
Quick tip for new homeowners in West Hollywood. The very first thing that you should always do is meet with a lender and get pre-approved so that you know exactly how much you can afford to buy. You won't be wasting your time or your real estate agent's time if you figure that out at the very beginning of the process. Interesting fun fact, I did that in 2018, and it put me on a path of figuring out what I could eventually purchase. And by 2021, I bought something that like my wildest dream came true. And it was because like there's no, I guess the other side tip to this is it's never too early to get pre-approved and to like go through that process and see what it takes, because you'll learn strategies to improve upon the amount that you're initially being offered if you do certain things too.
Do you have a recommended lender? I'm going to go there.
I have several. Depending on your own unique circumstances, I can
Call
provide.
you. All right, we're gonna give you a chance. We give you a chance to give you like out your information right at the end. So because the best place to get a broker usually is a referral from a, a real estate agent. I know that
Yeah,
because there is no crossover allowed for all those out there who think brokers get commissions from mortgage companies. They do not, because that is not legal.
yeah.
All
But
of you out there in TV land.
yeah, we only end up recommending ones that we trust and that we feel like do a good job too. Yeah,
Right, right. Escrow agents, the same thing. There's no commissions allowed, no referral fees, none of that. So don't think that your broker's ever going to run you to a bad escrow agent or a bad mortgage lender, because they want to get the deal done too. That's my PSA
yes.
for the day.
Yeah.
Uh, what was the last book you read that impacted your professional life?
I would go back. It's probably not the last book I read, but I think the most impactful was Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think that like really changed my mindset about so many different things.
What was the
And
one big takeaway from that Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I think it was just that you can like invest in something where, income generating real estate, you can buy something that and then you lease out to someone, and the tenants that have signed the lease are helping you to pay down your mortgage, and that's improving your credit score, your financial portfolio, and really your equity over time too. I think one of the greatest opportunities is the fact that you can use an FHA loan, for example, to purchase a duplex, a triplex, or fourplex, depending on where you are. And it's a great way to begin the process of trying to chase after financial freedom.
Awesome. Love that book. And as a former news anchor and part-time weatherman now, what was your favorite way to stay informed about industry trends of any kind?
Interestingly enough, I still, by the way, do the news side of things. I actually anchored
Dude,
the news last weekend, by the way. So I
no
do,
way. Getting more
or I
famous
do,
by the week, man.
I anchor the news, I anchor the weather. Sometimes I anchor the traffic segments too. But
Yes. All
so
fun
I'm still
stuff.
very much in all of it. But I think there's a website called inman.com
Inman.
that provides some like industry specific stuff. There's I forget, a woman named Diane who works at CNBC who covers real estate news, and I forget her last name, but I follow her on Twitter. And then there's Real Deal Los Angeles, which is kind of like an industry specific publication. I believe it's called the Real Estate Wealth Network, and they have a few different podcasts that are focused around real estate news for investors, and also real estate news in general. And so I try to follow those too. And then of course podcasts. There are podcasts you can type in, like when the NAR settlement dropped, I wanted to get a bunch of different perspectives. So I just searched in my Spotify for different NAR settlement podcasts, and it was plentiful too. As you know, speaking on one as we
As we talk about it right now. Full circle.
I should say
See,
this podcast in particular, that's the way.
property pro tips. Find it.
Yeah.
We're on Spotify.
Perfect.
So, personally, what's your hobby that most people might not know about?
Okay, so this is a new hobby. And so I don't want to be one of those people that acts as if I've been doing it my whole life. Beginning in January, I got really serious about working out. And starting like mid-January to now, I work out with a trainer, and I try to work out 5 to 6 days a week. Working out is like medicine, and it feels so good after I do. And especially if I do it in the morning. I always wake up with a little anxiety, and I think it's just because I wake up thinking of all the things I need to do that day. And going to the gym sheds that anxiety. It makes me more action oriented, and it just feels so good. And I've never lifted more weight in my life than I am right now. And so I feel like it's never too, as I'm staring down middle age, I feel like it's never too late to kind of go down this path. And I'm so glad that it's kind of clicked for me now. And just really, really enjoying it. Really. And so, yeah, that might be surprising. Not that I'm a meathead or a jock by any stretch of the imagination, but like I think people would be surprised that that I do really like to lift weights.
That's awesome. Hey, that's a fantastic habit. I mean, anything you could do consistently, and I mean, you're 4 months in, you got a good rhythm going.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's nothing. I mean, without our health, what are we? Right? We can't do real
Right.
estate.
That
We can't. It's no
that's
fun.
12 hour days too.
Right, right, right. So you got to keep our, manage that stress, right? And get some
Yeah,
sleep in there.
for sure.
Uh, Last question. What's your all-time favorite film or TV show you've appeared in?
Oh, that I've appeared. Oh, interesting. Okay. It's interesting because I was in I mean, obviously the Super Bowl commercial
Yeah,
was
what
so much
commercial
fun.
was that?
It was for Amazon Alexa, and part of the premise of the commercial was Alexa lost her voice. And so different celebrities were stepping in to provide the voice. And I was the news anchor that was announcing that she lost her voice. And so that was really cool.
That is
I
cool.
I will say, like, the first time I ever did this was really special. It was a movie called Surrogates with Bruce Willis,
Yeah, I
and I
remember that
played
show.
a robot news anchor. And then, but I've done Scandal, I've done American Horror Story, and
Wow.
I'm trying to. I know there's at least like another couple for shows that I loved. It was funny because there was a period of time where I like loved a show called How to Get Away with Murder, and then there was it would almost be the equivalent of being called up to do it for like Ted Lasso, which is one of my favorite
Mhm.
shows, but I never got the opportunity to to audition for that. But if there was something like that, I would have been super stoked.
And are you still doing acting, like gigs on the side when asked?
Yeah, I mean, I get actually, in fact, I just got an email, before I drove over here to submit an audition, and so I get them a lot. It's interesting because now that you can't meet people in person, you have to shoot it, phone,
Is that
and
how it
and
goes?
and I think, like, as you can tell, as I report live from my car in this particular way. So yeah,
I mean, that's how you submit resumes now. Submit your resume with your 30-second bit.
right.
Right?
No, exactly. Case in point. Yeah.
Right? Right. That's awesome. Well, Kirk, you are the man. I know your time is valuable. Is there anything else you'd like to say? One, is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience? And two, how can someone get a hold of you if they would like to list or buy a home from you here in the city of
I
Angels?
would I would love to hear from anyone and everyone who wants to list, or if they need a real estate agent to help them buy something too. And you can find me at getkirk.com. You can email me at kirk@getkirk.com. And I basically check it around the clock. So hopefully I'll catch you. And then I'm also on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. And so any of the social media networks or my website or email, would love to hear from you.
Okay. Awesome, Kirk. Well, thank you, my friend, for your time. That is
Thank
a
you.
wrap. Parting shot. What's the best quote you've ever heard?
Oh,
Ever
interesting.
I know I was throwing that one out. This is just out of left field.
Yeah, yeah.
Best
No,
quote.
that's really interesting. I need to think. It's funny because I'm trying to think of, there's a fitness quote that a friend of mine told me the other day. But then there's also one about getting older and aging. And then and then in terms of like, I'm completely failing you.
No, this is
I
great.
I also, you know what, if
It's
anything, at the very least, I love Carpe Diem, seize the day. And so I think maybe I'll leave you on that
seize
because
the
I think,
day it is.
yes, one day at a time, seize the day.
One day at a time.